joining us tonight on another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm your host once again for another fabulous little half hour where we are going to talk all things motorsports, because at long last, the greatest weekend in all of motorsports has arrived. It's Racemas. This Sunday, we're going to start our day off, obviously, with the Indianapolis 500. Then we're going to go to the Canadian Grand Prix for Formula One, followed by the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte for NASCAR. A little bit different. Usually we're used to racing Monaco in the morning, Indianapolis in the afternoon, and then Charlotte at night. A little bit different this year, but still tons of motorsport action this weekend. We've got Supercars races, we've got Super Formula races, we've got the Little 500 up at Anderson Speedway. Anything that you're interested in, it's coming up this weekend. So, on that note, let's go ahead and get you caught up on all the news and notes that you might have missed throughout the world of motorsports. And we'll begin, as always, with the news of Formula One, noting that former FIA head of aerodynamics Jason Somerville has officially joined Alpine as the deputy technical director. This comes following a 6-month waiting period after he left the FIA before he became a member of Alpine. So, big get there for Alpine. Hopefully they see some performance improvements out of that. Also in Formula One, McLaren Racing Chief Executive Zak Brown has reportedly sent a 6-page letter to FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem detailing his concerns over Formula One having common owners, much like how Red Bull owns both the Red Bull Racing Team, as well as the RB, Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, whatever it's been called. This comes on the heels of reports that Mercedes is considering purchasing a 24% minority stake in Alpine, the Alpine F1 team that Otro Capital plans to sell. So something we'll monitor there. Zak Brown making his pleas to the FIA, basically asking them, hey, please do something about this so that there's no conflicts of interest. We don't have teams buying up other teams to expand their lineups. Obviously, what we've got now with Red Bull and RB has been in place for 20 years now, and that's not likely to change, and that's not necessarily what Zak Brown is asking. He's not asking for Red Bull to be forced to sell RB, but instead he's asking for maybe we shouldn't allow this in the future and currently. So that is what Zak Brown has written to FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem here last week. Also, speaking of something we talked about last week with Mohammed Ben Sulayem, as well as a couple of weeks ago, the apparent change to V8 engines in Formula One by at least 2031 garnered a lot of mixed reactions within the paddock and within fans, but Ford is apparently all for a return of the V8 engines in Formula One, with the racing boss Mark Rushbrook saying that Ford would, quote, love to see a V8 here, and he also says the new regulation changes are not expected to affect their participation in Formula One or their partnership with Red Bull. And now, something else we should talk about regarding this Mark Rushbrook comments. He also said that Ford is actively in discussions with Max Verstappen about a potential factory hypercar drive in the WEC. Because remember, Ford is going to have a factory hypercar operation next year in the WEC, but it would likely not include Max Verstappen next year. However, if a schedule allows it, Verstappen could potentially run the 24 Hours of Le Mans in the not-too-distant future. So that's a very big bombshell. Could Max Verstappen potentially, if he follows through on his threats to leave Formula One, maybe go and join Ford's factory hypercar program in the WEC? Of course, his contract with Red Bull Racing in Formula One is up at the end of 2028, which is where Rushbrook kind of expects that to potentially happen. But either way, even though nothing has been announced formally, and probably won't be announced at all because it's likely to not happen next year, we do have confirmation now that Max Verstappen has been in discussions about a potential move to sports cars. That's something we'll have to monitor throughout the rest of the year and next year as well. And on that note, we talked about the Indianapolis 500 coming up this weekend. We've got plenty of news and notes to get you ready for the Indy 500. But of course, be on the lookout for another Racing Report episode where we're going to preview the 110th running of the Indianapolis 500. That will be coming up this week on WTHR Plus and our streaming app. But in the meantime, let's talk about the big news in the world of IndyCar. If you watched the post-qualifying practice session on Monday, you saw the big accident that involved Alexander Rossi, Pato O'Ward, and Roman Grosjean. Now, Rossi and O'Ward are both going to have to go to a backup car for the Indy 500 on Sunday, but Alexander Rossi is a little bit worse for wear because after that accident, he underwent surgery to a finger on his left hand and to his right ankle. However, Rossi does plan to still compete in the Indianapolis 500. That's as of Wednesday, and he is looking forward to get back in the car in Carb Day, though it is important to note that he will start second and in a backup car. He doesn't have to go to the rear because it's still Rossi who will be driving that number 20, so even though he's going to a backup car, he will still retain his second-place starting position. Two drivers who won't retain their starting positions, though, were Kyle Busch and Jack Harvey, who were both penalized after qualifying on Sunday. Collette originally qualified 10th. In fact, he made the fast 12, while Harvey initially qualified 29th. Well, they're now going to start 32nd and 33rd, respectively, because their qualifying times were disallowed after technical inspection. IndyCar said that the teams had made modifications to the Dallara-supplied energy management system covers and the cover-to-A-arm mounting points with unapproved hardware. So that is why they got moved to the back. AJ Foyt Racing cited a, quote, communication breakdown as the reason for Collette's disqualification, while Dreyer Reinbold Racing took responsibility for the penalty but said that it was not done to achieve a performance gain. So a big controversy, of course, more disqualifications after qualifying, just like we had last year. We've had it again this year, though this is substantially less scandalous than the Penske cheating scandal of last year. This, again, was not really done to achieve any kind of performance advantage, as Dreyer Reinbold said, and it was just a simple communication error from AJ Foyt Racing, but they are accepting the penalties, no appeals being made, so Kyle Busch and Jack Harvey are moved to the back. They'll start 32nd and 33rd on Sunday. Speaking of qualifying, Doug Boles told Racer this past week that he wants to make sure that bumping returns in the Indianapolis 500 and that it remains an important part of the Indianapolis 500, but he also admitted that there's no current immediate fix. He noted that the F2 schedule change pretty much doomed Colton Herta, who was all but expected to run the Indy 500 this year, and that was the expectation literally until the Formula 2 calendar got announced with them running at Miami and now in Canada. And then he also noted that it was expected until literally the last minute that Prema would indeed enter the Indy 500, but now that they haven't. So Doug Boles, probably around March or April or February, was probably expecting at least 36 cars in the Indianapolis 500, maybe 34, but at least 36. And unfortunately, that just didn't happen. 3 entries did not come together, and we got 33 entries and no bumping. But definitely that's something that the series has noted. It's not going to happen from locked-in entries, by the way. That's the number one thing to remember, is they're not going to lock in entries for the Indy 500 under any circumstances. But Doug Boles wants to see bumping back. It's just a question of how do we get there. We'll find out. Maybe next year we'll have a 34th, maybe a 35th entry in the Indianapolis 500. But right now we're all looking forward to this Sunday's running of the Indy 500. Also, something to note on the Indy 500 note, Carson Hocevar said last week during practice that he would love to attempt the Indianapolis 500 someday, and noted that it was a dream of his to participate in the race. And now, drawing 2 and 2 together, it's not impossible, because given the fact that TWG Global, which owns Andretti Global in the IndyCar Series, also owns Spire Motorsports, which is where Carson Hocevar races in the NASCAR Cup Series and in one-off races in the Truck Series. Maybe there could be an opening there for an Andretti car for Carson Hocevar, but at this point it's far too soon to tell. He'd have to have sponsorship. A lot of things would have to happen in order for that to fall into place. But it is kind of cool to note that a rising up-and-coming NASCAR star has interest in attempting the Indianapolis 500 in the future. All right. On that note, let's go ahead and take our first break of the show. But when we come back, we're going to break down some very interesting news in the world of supercars, as well as all of the news and notes from All-Star Weekend in the world of NASCAR. So, more Racing Report coming up after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks again so much for sticking with us through that break. Now let's go ahead and talk about the news from the world of supercars, because again, we do have a supercars race this weekend. It'll be in Tasmania at my favorite Australian racing circuit, Symmons Plains Raceway. And the Sunday race is going to be a little bit longer because Supercars has extended the length of the final race of the weekend from 78 laps to now 84 laps. They will also add a third compulsory pit stop to that race to account for its new 200-kilometer distance. So some interesting news there. Will be a little bit longer of a race in Tasmania this weekend on Sunday. That's obviously Sunday morning. Coming up later on in the show, we'll detail exactly when that race is scheduled for those of us watching here in the United States. Also, some news in supercars. Erebus has had Cooper Murray shake down the latest Camaro parity upgrades at Winton Motor Raceway ahead of this weekend's round in Tasmania. The changes consist of a small packer that has now been installed along the wheel band of the front bumper, an increased rear wing angle, say that 10 times twice, by about 0.4 degrees, so not very much, and a relocation of the front splitter to where it was before we had the rounds in New Zealand. So, a little bit of a changes for the Camaros coming up this weekend, but again, it's all done in the name of parity. Also, for those Supercars fans who are stateside, who might be making a visit out to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway this weekend, Scott McLaughlin's championship-winning 2020 Ford Mustang will be on display at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. That is probably one of the first times a supercar has ever set foot in Indianapolis, let alone at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And so I think that's a really cool thing, a very cool opportunity to get, and another reason to get out to the Speedway if you're local in Indianapolis and check out the museum, because I've been there since it reopened, and I gotta say, it's top tier. If you are a big fan of racing like I am, if you love the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, you've got to get out there at least sometime this week, because that might be your only chance to see an actual in-person supercar without having to actually travel to Australia. So really cool news there coming up. But on that note, let's go ahead and move into the world of NASCAR, because there is no shortage of it, because we had the Hall of Fame selection ceremony on Tuesday. Kevin Harvick, Jeff Burton, and Larry Phillips will be the newest inductees to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, while Lisa France Kennedy was named the 2027 recipient of the Landmark Award. Those people will be inducted as part of the class of 2027 on January 22nd. So mark your calendars there. January 22nd will be the official formal induction ceremony for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Now, let's talk about silly season. It's never too early. It's never too early to start talking about silly season. And Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic dropped a very big article that was free to read for everybody this past week, where he detailed some of the biggest news in the world of silly season for NASCAR. And let's go ahead and go through them right now. First and foremost, Kyle Busch is currently expected to sign a contract extension that would keep him with Richard Childress Racing for at least the near future. So for everybody who kind of expected Kyle to potentially be looking for a way out of RCR, Jordan Bianchi is saying that is not exactly what's on the table, as it's expected that Kyle Busch will return to RCR for 2027. Meanwhile, RFK Racing is expected to operate one of their 3 cars without a charter next season, and that their sponsors are indeed aware and understand the risks associated from running unchartered. Now, currently, RFK Racing leases its charter from Rickware Racing, but as we covered last year with the charter debacle there between them and Legacy Motor Club, that charter is scheduled to be sold to Legacy Motor Club for next year, which again would leave RFK Racing without a charter, and it doesn't seem like one is going to be for sale anytime soon. So they are fully prepared to run one of their 3 cars as unchartered for next year. Now, speaking of Legacy Motor Club, they are expected to sign Riley Herbst full-time in that 3rd car that they will be entering, and that will now then free up the 3rd car at 2311 for Corey Heim to run full-time, and it wouldn't technically be his rookie year because he's run so many races this season, but he would be able to run the full NASCAR Cup Series schedule next season with 2311 Racing. Of course, that is what Jordan Bianchi is reporting. Announcements could be made at any time throughout the next couple of months, so we'll monitor that. Finally, Alex Bowman is in a contract year with Hendrick Motorsports, and while he could get a 1-year contract extension, Hendrick Motorsports is reportedly keen on moving Corey Day up to the Cup level in the near future. But in the immediate future, near immediate, a little bit different there, they apparently, Hendrick Motorsports are targeting Connor Zilisch. That would be a huge get. Apparently, they have been very impressed with what Zilisch has done so far with Trackhouse, and they'd like to be a part of that. So, in the event that perhaps Alex Bowman does not get a contract extension, you could potentially see a situation where Connor Zilisch goes to Rick Hendrick. Now, the important caveat to that to note is that Zilisch is still under contract with Trackhouse Racing, which means Rick Hendrick would have to buy out Zilisch from his contract before they could officially bring him in, which means they could wait until that contract is up and extend Alex Bowman potentially for another year, maybe 2 years, before finally bringing Zilisch over to the team. So that's the latest news in silly season, as per Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic. All of this news will continue to monitor throughout the rest of the year, so you won't want to miss a single episode of the Racing Report if you want to stay in the loop. Another big bombshell out of the world of NASCAR that happened this last week is that multiple sources appear to indicate that the Chicago street race could return to the NASCAR schedule as early as next year. There is no formal deal in place yet between NASCAR and the city, but there is reportedly, quote, growing optimism that the race will be on the 2027 NASCAR schedule. There's another thing we'll have to note, because again, Chicagoland is expected to host NASCAR again for the first time since 2019. Coming up here later on in July. So it'll be interesting to see when that announcement comes and at what point. What do they do with Chicagoland? What is the immediate future of Chicagoland Speedway? All of that is currently unknown, but if we know anything, you'll hear it first right here on the Racing Report. Now for some bummer news about racetracks. Another racetrack is shutting down. We talked last week about the end of the Motegi Oval. Well, now Pikes Peak International Raceway out in Fountain, Colorado has announced that it will cease operations after the 2026 season and will be replaced by a future mixed-use development. A very crushing blow to fans out there in Colorado, as there is no major racetrack out there in Colorado. Now, there is Colorado National Speedway, don't get me wrong, that exists, it's a great track, but it's not one that could potentially host a major auto race, either IndyCar or the NASCAR Cup Series, let alone the O'Reilly Series and the Truck Series. So it's a very unfortunate situation there, and for everybody wondering, well, why didn't NASCAR ever go back there? Well, it's because when ISC sold the track back in 2005, there was a caveat in that deal that said this track could never host a major auto race ever again. So ever since then, it's primarily hosted clubs racing. And so now, unfortunately, the end of the road is near for Pikes Peak International Raceway in Fountain, Colorado. So if you are in Colorado, highly recommend getting out there as soon as you can to enjoy Pikes Peak International Raceway while you still can. Another piece of news now coming out of the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, AM Racing has formally ceased operations following the team's withdrawal from Rockingham last month, so it's the end of the road for AM Racing. Nick Sanchez again out of a ride. That's a bummer. Hopefully he'll land on his feet, but it's been a very rough several months for Sanchez. He lost his ride with Big Machine Racing to Patrick Staropoli, and now he's out of a team because the team that he did sign to race 2026 with has officially shut down. In the Truck Series, Parker Kligerman will return to Colleague Racing's number 25 free agent truck at Michigan next month. And then 18-year-old super late model driver Casey Klein, not Kane, Klein, I think that's how you pronounce his name, is going to drive for Rackley WAR in the number 27 truck at North Wilkesboro in his NASCAR debut. Crazy, too. He's also from Washington. Casey Kane is from Enumclaw, and Casey Klein, I think Klein, is also from Washington. Not Enumclaw, but still Washington. That is it for NASCAR news for this week. Let's go ahead and take our second and final break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to recap all of the races that happened this past weekend, and we're going to get you ready for the glut of motorsports on tap coming up this weekend. So, more Racing Report coming up after these messages. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks again so much for sticking with us through that break. Let's go ahead here and wrap up the show in its final segment talking about the weekend recap. Indy 500 qualifying was rained out on Saturday. Everything was pushed to Sunday, which meant that the procedures were condensed a little bit. Instead of having that weird top 15 format that we talked about, we actually just went back to the normal Fast 12, Fast 6. Mother Nature has a way of getting her way. And Alex Palou won his second career Indianapolis 500 pole position, so he will start from P1 on Sunday as he goes for a second straight Indianapolis 500 crown. Meanwhile, in NASCAR, we had the All-Star race weekend in Dover. The truck race kicked off on Friday with Kyle Busch winning, and then the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race followed on Saturday with Corey Day scoring his second career O'Reilly Auto Parts Series victory by holding off former champion and longtime veteran of the series, Justin Allgaier. It was a thrilling race. If you haven't checked it out, highly recommend it. And then in the All-Star race at Dover, the first ever Dover All-Star race, Denny Hamlin scored another All-Star win and the $1 million prize that went with it. After holding off teammate Chase Briscoe, Indiana's own just came up less than a second short of his first All-Star win. But either way, they're all looking forward to Charlotte next weekend, as everyone else is. But that's it for the NASCAR recap. Let's talk about some of the other races that happened this week as well. We had the Nürburgring 24 Hours. If you haven't watched that, don't blame you. Apparently, it was a little bit of a mess with the Racer Network being paywalled, Racer Plus being quite paywalled, whereas everybody else got to watch the race for free. If you weren't in the United States or Canada, you got to watch the race for free on YouTube. If you were in the United States and Canada, you had to pay for Racer Plus or have access to the Racer Network, which didn't actually also broadcast the full 24 hours. Either way, a fantastic race. Max Verstappen made his 24-hour endurance race debut in that race, had a great race going for him until a mechanical problem knocked him out very late in that race, but it's okay because Mercedes' second car still won. The Mercedes-AMG Team Ravenel of Mauro Engel, Maxime Martin, Fabian Schiller, and Lucas Soltz were the victors of the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring, while Team Verstappen finished 37th after that mechanical issue. But of course, Alles Garage Racing's Dacia Logan finished 107th, 64 laps down, but it did finish as it easily captured the hearts of sports car and endurance racing fans everywhere. I know it captured my heart because I will never give up now because he never did. Long live the Dacia Logan. Formula E was in Monaco this weekend. Race 1 was won by Nick DeVries. Shout out to all those people who said Nick DeVries wasn't cut out for Formula 1. He just won a Formula E race at Monaco. And then Oliver Rowland came home in the victor spot in Race 2. The Arca Menard Series had a standalone race with the East Series in Toledo as well. Tristan McKee won that. He looks very good. If you haven't watched Tristan McKee yet, he is an up-and-coming driver that I would definitely recommend keeping an eye on. Now, on that note, let's get you caught up. Here's the moment you've been waiting for. Every single race that's coming up this weekend across the world of motorsports, at least more or less every race. Not every race, but the major ones that you'll probably be able to watch. First of all, obviously, the Indianapolis 500, 110th running coming up this Sunday at 12:30 p.m. That will be live. Television blackout lifted. Everybody can watch it. We'll see what the ratings are for that. Obviously, Alex Palou sitting on the pole. We'll see how Alexander Rossi does with a little bit of an injury and a backup car coming from the second place starting position. Meanwhile, the Formula One Canadian Grand Prix is going to happen. It's also a sprint race weekend in combination with F2. So the sprint race is going to be Saturday at noon, while the Grand Prix is actually going to be Sunday at 4 o'clock. So maybe, unfortunately, will be happening probably around the last 50 laps of the Indy 500, barring any rain. But that's going to be obviously on Apple TV, so dust off the Apple TV. You're going to need that. Formula 2 will also be in action, as I said. Watch for Colton Herta. That's where he'll be. The sprint race in Formula 2 is scheduled for Saturday at 2:10 p.m. Eastern Time, while the feature race is scheduled for Sunday at 12:05, just before the Indy 500. So maybe you'll be able to catch both. Good luck. Godspeed to you if you're going to try and do that. Meanwhile, after all that, we got the Coca-Cola 600 coming up this weekend in the NASCAR world. That'll be Sunday at 6 p.m., and it'll be Prime Sports, Amazon Prime. You'll have to stream it. That'll be Prime's first race of their 5-race slate for the NASCAR Cup Series. But never fear, if you have traditional cable or even over-the-air television, you'll still be able to watch races this weekend because the trucks are in Charlotte Friday at 7:30 on FS1, with the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series also in Charlotte Saturday at 5 p.m. on the CW. Supercars is racing in Tasmania. They got 3 races on the tap. Race 1 is scheduled for Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Race 2 is Saturday morning at 2 a.m. Eastern Time. So really, not long after that, about 3 hours after that. Whereas race 3 is scheduled for Sunday morning at 12:45 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're going to the Indianapolis 500, highly recommend not staying up to watch that. Get all your sleep. You're going to need it. It's going to be an early day for you. Also in Tasmania, we're going to have Super 2 and Super Utes joining the Supercars. And then Super Formula is going to be in Suzuka. Race 1 and 2 are both scheduled for 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time on both Saturday and Sunday. The ARCA Menard Series West is in Colorado National Speedway. That race will be at Saturday at 9:45 Eastern Time on Flow Racing. And then you'll have the Little 500 in Anderson Speedway, one of the greatest preliminary races to the Indy 500. That'll be coming up Saturday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. You either can watch it on Dirt Vision or Racing America. Either way, you'll have to pay for a subscription in order to watch it. But that is it for this week's episode of the Racing Report. Thank you again so much for tuning in. We'll have more Racing Report coming up later on this week with a full preview of the 110th Indianapolis 500. Look for that coming to WTHR's streaming app in the next couple of days. So, for WTHR, my name is Rob Peeters. I hope you all enjoy another fabulous Race Miss, and we will talk to you next week where we recap it all on the Racing Report.